What say you, Cathy?
Hell yeah. Moving on. I got nothing to counter that.
Hello and welcome to episode 252 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Wednesday, the 8th of January. Yes, Wednesday, as we change things up a bit here. But I still hope you're staying as sane as you feel you need to be. Some things have not changed. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I am a CMO. And in this new hump day slot, I will chat with chums and share our marketing street knowledge that I hope will bring out the Rockstar CMO in you. This is the first week of splitting the podcast between the studio and bar segments. And this week, Cathy McKnight makes her monthly visit to the studio. And I get to speak to someone else rather than just myself like I did on Saturday about predictions for 2025. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
So let's get to the marketing studio, where I welcome Cathy McKnight, Chief Solver of Problems at the 7th Bear, the artist formerly known as the Content Advisor. Welcome back, Cathy, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I am very well, Ian. How are you? Other than your extremely FM radio voice going on today.
Well, let's hope it lasts. I mean, it's not the first time that I've done this podcast with a sore throat, so apologies to the listeners again. Well, how's Toronto? And are you getting, because a couple of weeks or about a month ago, you said you were looking forward to the snow. You must have it in a vengeance now, right? This time?
We don't actually. We seem to be in some kind of snow vortex where it's all around us and not actually falling on us. It's cold. It's a balmy minus 14 here today.
Jesus.
So
and that's centigrade for you.
It is
Canadians,
yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Good.
So it's chilly, but it's winter and it's January, so that's okay. And the sun is shining, which makes it.
I love that.
When it gets this cold, you don't often get clouds. It's usually sunny. So that's
Yeah. I know. That's I love those crisp cold days. I mean, minus 14 maybe a bit of a test, but I love those crisp cold days. That sounds really nice. We've had a little bit of that for us today, but yeah, so we're going through a bit of a cold snap too. So a nice wrap up one, which is probably why I'm speaking as I am. So anyway, so welcome back, Cathy. And I thought that this week, as it's the I think, yes, it's the beginning of January.
It is.
It's the first show of the year. No, the second show of the year, because I did one on my own. And we are awash with predictions. And tis the season to do predictions, Cathy, and we can't avoid it either. Well, we could have avoided it. We could have talked about anything we liked. But since I wrote the document that we're going to be talking about, then I'm afraid you can't avoid it. Well, you can if you like. So we're going to talk about predictions. One other thing, and I've shared some of my favorite predictions on the podcast and in the newsletter a few times, where I've got from Forrester and other places. But this time, I was looking at the Content Marketing Institute's predictions posts, which I enjoy their work. I mean, the stuff that Content Marketing Institute chucks out is really good. And what they've done is they've done a post which, was it 40 different predictions? I mean, it was a hell of a lot, wasn't it? And
it was a lot.
Basically, I don't remember getting the invite, but it's the great or the good of the B2B marketing world have all commented. I think I was away that day when they might not have approached me for that.
Probably.
So I've picked out of that 40, I've picked 5 that I'd like to chat with you. And knowing you and me, Cathy, we may not get to all 5. But we'll give it a shot.
Ian, if we get to 3 or more, we have had a stellar day.
I don't know if you want to put a bet on that. First, but I should ask, people remember who you are, Cathy, because you were only on a few weeks ago. But you've done, and I think you might have mentioned this last time you were on, but you've done a little pivot, haven't you? You're now no longer the content advisory. And as Robert has shared with us also previously, your 7th bear. How's that going?
We are Seventh Bear. We did we launched 2025 with a new brand, and very much aligned with, some of what we're reading and going to talk about today, which is, do better, not more, be thoughtful, not necessarily faster.
Yeah.
And be authentic, right? So it's about, getting organized, slowing down, really reflecting, and leveraging the tools that we have to our advantage, not bending to the will of the tool, right? So that's very much what Seventh Bear, what we reimagined ourselves with this new name, about bringing our literally decades of wisdom and experience. We've probably seen it, we've probably done it, appreciate that it needs to be done in a unique way to meet the needs of the individual orgs. But that's where Seventh Bear came from. So I love, what we're going to talk about today is very much along those lines of, getting organized, taking a beat, and doing what's right for the business, not what you think is right because everybody else is doing.
Nice. What I like as well, chatting to both you and Robert offline, is this hasn't been a pivot of a vanity pivot where you're like, oh, I want to rebrand and be cool and have this new messaging. It's actually what clients have been asking you for, isn't it? I mean, the depth of you and Robert's expertise goes beyond content marketing, and I think that's reflective in the work you're doing. And if you start doing that work, that's what your agency reflects your client work, right? So
exactly,
I think it's splendid. All right, so that's and actually. That leads me nicely into the first prediction, actually, doing great work. So, and I think there's a couple of names in here where you're going to know the actual person, and I'm going to know the person because I've read their name in my head a number of times, and it might be the first time I've ever said their name out loud. So you may have to correct me. But Stephanie Stahl, who is actually the editor of Content Marketing Institute, and the fact that I can't.
Yeah, she's the GM.
The GM, good Lord. She used to be the editor, didn't she? Used to be the person you went to if you wanted to get published, because I remember I have had a little bit of interaction with her, but obviously I need to learn to say her name properly if I'm going to get anywhere with
Stephanie
getting my...
Stahl, and she's the GM, and she is brilliant as she is lovely.
Yeah.
And yes, amazing individual.
Yeah. And I know that when you do these predictions posts, you're supposed to tag everybody in the world on them so they will see... I always forget to do that, but maybe if Stephanie does listen to this, then that's very nice of you to say so. Anyway, they are kind of, are they all? They are they're sort of predictions and trends, aren't they? So we've got a collection here of predictions and trends, but this is a prediction, and I like this one because it goes back to what you were saying about what you guys are trying to do with Seventh Bear. Is I predict and expect and challenge marketers to double down in 2025 and work harder at creating something great. Maybe that means less content. Maybe that means video instead of articles. Maybe that means real thought leadership. Only you know what your audience needs and craves most. Yes, it's harder than ever to stand out, but that's the price for not doing so. Never being seen or heard. Sorry, but what's the price for not doing so? Never. I should have rehearsed.
That's okay.
Quick exits, delete or unsubscribes. Marketers don't often get a second chance. So bring your greatest work in 2025. I like that. And the nice thing as well is I can chime in with Robert on this one, because in his predictions, because he's one of the 40 plus luminaries that were asked about this stuff, he says successful teams in 2025 will reinvest in themselves to slow down, be more creative, and swing for more trusted creative brand experience to create competitive advantage. It's a new era in marketing. We're moving from move fast to break things to move slow and invent new things. It's quite a lot there from me there, Cathy. I need to give you a chance now. And that's exactly what you were just talking about, right? So what do you think people need to do, and what does double down and create something great actually mean when people, I mean, these things sound great and we would all agree and subscribe to them. What do we, how do we actually do it? And what are you going to advise your clients on this one?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree with Stephanie more. Absolutely, marketers need to stop being content factories and start becoming more bespoke chefs, right? So less but better, I think, is the way to think of it. The challenge there is that, they're still being measured on pieces of work, right?
Yeah.
They're still, their goals for the year is, 4 blog posts a month and, 17 campaigns in a year and 4 events, etc. And so there's this dichotomy, and negative push for each other to what they should be doing to how they're going to be measured, right? Doing great work, it sounds great until deadlines are looming. Everybody's budget is shrinking. The person who is ticking off the boxes is saying, yeah, great work. I love the innovation, but did you do those 5 Instagram posts that you were supposed to do? So, we really need to slow down and invent rather than just produce and get it out there. But we also have to educate and inform our leadership as to why, right?
Yeah.
We don't, as marketers, we don't get second chances, right? We have to be right the first time. So let's take the time to look at the data and what it's telling us. Take the time to think about what is actually cool and innovative and will resonate with our audiences. And then let's look to the technology to take away some of the guesswork, take away some of the route work that we're doing, the spinning that we do, so that we can get that time back to be innovative and creative and create more better.
Yeah. And I think this is something that I think you and I have talked about in the past, which is it's about measurement in a sense, isn't it? Because my skin crawled and a little bit me died inside when you said, oh, because their goal is to create 4 blog posts a week. It's like, oh, really? You're absolutely right. Many content teams are production houses or what would I call it? A sweatshop. Yep. I worked with one client and I said, we don't want to create a content sweatshop. And it's understanding what does great actually mean, right? So I think that this is a really nice lofty goal from Stephanie. I think the practical implementation of it, exactly as you were saying, is going to require some education. So for example, some of the other predictions that are floating around it is that, we need to be more into brand and we need to get off the MQL sort of crack pipe. All of these things now require education of our commercial teams and our leadership teams because we're so used to that now, aren't we? So this change is a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. And like I said, it's, we work with clients and generally speaking, those doing the marketing work, and this is not to throw any, director or above of marketing under the bus.
Yeah.
But, they read something or they're told something or they hear something or they see a competitor doing something and they're like, okay, we got to beat them. But they don't think about how to beat them. Like they're probably right. If we're not doing that, we probably should be if it's being successful. But how do we do it in our own way to reflect our own brand, to be true to our own culture?
I've got a blog post brewing about that very thing. In fact, I might. It is. I call it green-eyed marketing because I think that you get this pressure as a marketing team saying, my competitors have done this. They're doing these videos. I've seen them do this on LinkedIn. They're doing this on whatever bloody platform. And you think, well, you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. You're not actually seeing whether this performed. Just because you saw it and loads of people liked it doesn't mean that it was success. And what was success? So this really sort of drives down into this idea of what does Stephanie mean by great?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And and also in all the noise, you might produce something beautiful, but if it might get drowned out. So I don't know. It's starting to get a little bit pessimistic about this, but I love this idea, and especially as both Stephanie and Robert agree with this, and I like both of their work. So that's good. So that's the first prediction that I think we're going along with. Just do great work. So let's hope that happens. All right, the second one that I picked, and I think that this discussion, and so you think that we're not going to make it past 3. I think this might be my wild card to help us jog past this one pretty quickly, because I'm expecting you just say hell yeah, and then we'll move on. So this might be a short discussion. Cathy McPhillips, your namesake. Well, the first part of your namesake.
We refer to each other as the other Cathy Mick. Yep.
The other Cathy Mick in content marketing. When talking about AI, she shared, the most successful marketers will recognize that strategy must come first, clearly defining goals, understanding their audience, and setting measurable outcomes before identifying where AI can amplify efforts. What say you, Cathy?
Hell yeah. Moving on. I got nothing to counter that. You know, the temptation is to skip ahead and let AI write the strategy for you, right? So I agree with everything she said. Like, of course, strategy's got to come first. It's got to drive everything you do. But don't lean into AI to the point where you let AI write the strategy, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
And people are doing that, right? They're testing things out. Play with it 100%. But, you know, don't ask it to do something, print it out and hand it to your boss. Here's my strategy.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I mean, I think both of us have talked about this before. It's about the journey, isn't it? Whether you're writing, whether you're creating a strategy, whatever you're doing, getting generative AI to do it for you, you're missing out on the learning process of actually doing the work. And it may be that this thing will chuck out a fairly mediocre something in 5 minutes. But if you spent half a day just really, you're going to come out, it's outputs and outcomes and all that stuff, isn't it? You're going to come out much better, much smarter for that. Yeah. So I think, and also you guys talk about, I'm not going to get this phrase right because there's a couple of readies in it. You talk about being ready for being ready for AI, right?
Get ready to get ready for AI.
Yeah. And I think you've got some of that on your website.
Webinar. Yeah, we did a webinar on that
That's right.
February, I think it was. And that's exactly it is, you know, do the legwork. Everything we do that we do well, that turns out well, is because we're prepared.
Yeah.
Right? It's, you need a plan, you know, if you don't have a plan, it's a plan for failure.
You know what? Almost everything we talk about in this podcast, whether I'm talking to you, Jeff, Robert, or anybody, is and some new doohickey comes along into the conversation. It's always we're like it's a bit dull, really. We're always like, yeah, well, you've got to think about your plan and strategy, and then how you're going to measure it. It's just anything, isn't it? A new channel, anything, new tool, anything. How does it fit into your strategy, and how are you going to measure it? Yeah. Right, cool. Well, I managed to stretch that out a little bit more and hampered myself on our ability to get through these 5.
Oh, but we're getting to 3, so we're good.
Number 3. So number 3 is about GEO and AIO. And there are a lot of predictions about generative AI optimization, having our content picked up by ChatGPT and Google's AI overview. So and there's a few of them. There's some of these different trends inside this document, inside this article, actually refer to a couple of these, but I'm going to pick on Andy Crestodina. And he mentioned it being called generative engine optimization, GEI. And some of the other contributors will touch on this. My question to you, and I've got a very clear thought on this, but are you seeing this filter into the real work of client work? Are clients actually talking about this yet? Is there any? No.
No, not yet. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had one conversation. It was a sidebar conversation with somebody who they called it AIO. They weren't calling it AIO. So again, I don't think the acronym has been cast yet. I think there's still some wiggle room.
Yeah.
Although I don't necessarily see AIO. I see GEO as a subset of AIO, right? Because it's a generative AI as opposed to AI in general.
Yeah.
So I think that could be like a subcast of it. But, you know, it's undeniably a thing. If your content isn't optimized for AI, then, you know, write it on a piece of paper and leave it at the coffee shop because nobody's going to find it, right? It's just the way it is. I think a lot of like SEO, you know, a lot of companies started SEO and then kind of went, okay, we're doing it. We ticked the box and they moved on. They're not optimizing it. They're not reviewing it. They're not changing it. They're not evolving it. A lot of companies' websites were not built to optimize SEO, which is just in anything that was built after 2010 is just cuckoo bananas to me. How you build a site that you can't optimize for SEO, because that's the be all end all. And it has been for more than a decade. So not to say that other things don't matter, but if you can't do that, if you can't optimize your metadata and your content and your slugs and all the things to be found, and the way the algorithms are changing so quickly now, it used to be they didn't, right? When, you know, Google, it used to change periodically. But now it seems like they're optimizing it by the minute almost, it feels like sometimes. So, but, optimizing for AI summaries, it's kind of, like, it's a black box.
Yeah. Well, and also, there's the SEO thing, I think, Cathy, as well. Things have changed so much since the early days of SEO where, there was a lot of technical structure in your web page just for Google to be able to read it or whatever. It was a much more clearer art, I suppose. And nowadays, I think that Google claims that it's trying to reward human content, right? That actually we shouldn't be stuffing it with keywords and shit, and then we should actually be just writing, and Google will figure it out. So hopefully that's coming to fruition.
Absolutely. Well, and let's be frank, right? It's not like Google or ChatGPT publish their playbooks and say, here's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
They're always changing the rules. And, optimization for many, was code word for trying to game the system.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, ever since SEO became a thing, that's been it. I mean, think back to when people used to put the same word, that keyword in 400 times in the background, right? In the metadata so that it came up. Well, that's gaming the system. That's not quality. That's not thinking customer first. That's not doing your best to deliver the best experience and an organic experience that they can drive. That's just being able to go and looking at Google results and showing, hey, look, I win because I'm on the first page. Right?
Absolutely.
So, it's...
Yeah. I also think comparing these two things is not accurate, because I think SEO and PPC, you're responding to intent. Somebody's looking to solve a problem, and you can offer that in your website. You can see that conversation, if you like. So I've got the air quotes going up happening. But I think it's slightly more complicated with ChatGPT. Well, Google's AI overviews, yes. What it's doing in its search engine, yes. But so I've done some research using ChatGPT for a couple of things this year. And you have to tell it to give you your references. And it's really weird that some of it has been vendor content, but it's not been the vendors I would have expected. It's been these obscure vendors where it's pulling this content from. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that there's two things I think we're going to need to understand as marketers. Do we really need to give a shit? How much traffic is this really driving? And is it going to actually convert? If somebody's researching the problem, we're just at that point, we're shaping their vision of the problem, right? It's so early stage, it's not even in the funnel. It's something, it's in that dark phase. There's that. And then there's we're going to need to understand what it is what are we optimizing? How is it that this obscure vendor got chosen by ChatGPT to serve this response and not somebody else? And it was fairly generic content. So yes, there's a lot to learn in there, isn't there? So yes.
And I, that's one of the things that I'm loving, because me, I am so research and love learning, and I want to know who's doing what and why, and sometimes proving it wrong, not necessarily because I'm like, what the hell? And one of the things that I love is, and the way I'm using AI is, source me 5 of the most recent research sources for X.
Yeah.
And it's finding me stuff that I would never find if I just Googled.
No, I know.
Because it would come up on like page 37.
Yeah.
So, and it's great stuff. So I've found some new outlets for research, some new writers that are great, totally obscure. And, some of them have been around for a long time. And, so like me, I've been doing this for, a couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a household name, which is fine, but it's great to see some other great thinking and getting exposure to that.
Oh, absolutely. But it's understanding how that black box works, right? And if there is any point in us investing hugely in this, and worrying about it. And also my theory on it, I didn't actually quote what Andy Crestodino actually said about this, but my theory on this is, I think that the trouble is for the next couple of quarters, maybe longer, we're going to see a lot of snake oil bullshit about this. Everybody's going to be a GEO or AIO fucking ninja by mid 2025.
Oh, 100%.
Then the bubble will burst a bit, and then somebody smart, I don't know, maybe it'll be Andy or it'll be that guy that founded Moz that does some great stuff, Randy Fishkin, somebody like that will open the box for us on that one, and we'll all get on with doing this normally. All right, so that was number 3, GEO or AIO. Number 4, now then, this is called Get Your Content House in Order. And if anybody knows you, they might guess the author of this one. Again, where was my invite from these people? So this is a really insightful prediction from somebody called Cathy McKnight. Get your content house in order. Start by setting clear goals and tracking progress to optimize workflows, refine roles, and clarify races. Responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, responsibility matrix. Develop a plan to transition from day-to-day operations to strategic orchestration. By building a solid foundation, you'll be able to adapt quickly, harness data insights effectively, and create content that deeply resonates with your audience. You know what? I should have got you to read that out.
Yes.
You're here.
There you go. I got your opinion on it. There, that's better.
Well, I'm shocked that you want to get organized. So,
from my perspective, pure gold, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what dreams are made of. But it's this kind of work, and as you mentioned, and as I've said, I've been doing this for a really long time, and I was a project manager, certified project manager before I got into the work that I do now.
Yeah.
I've done it from a technical perspective of building solutions, and I've done it on the content side. I've done it from a consulting perspective. And it's the least sexiest thing and the last thing people really want to focus on, but streamlining workflows, clarifying roles, and getting your baseline. I'm not even talking like big data. I'm talking like your 101 of data game really tight. People are gobsmacked about what impact that has on everything else they do. We've had clients come back to us and admit, like, listen, you saw my eyes rolling when we talked about this, and you were like, yeah, blah, blah, workflow, governance, documentation, keep going. But thank goodness someone on my team, the person that we delegated it to or assigned it to took it seriously, because it has made the world of difference. It stops the back and forth. You have something to point to and say, this is how we do it. Now, if you have a better way of doing it, then let's look at that, right? Let's do the continuous improvement. But knowing what you're responsible for empowers you to do that and do that well. Mm-hmm. But it also empowers you to say, no, I'm not going to do that, which gives you room to do your actual job. Because that's the other thing is people start taking things on that, 1, they're not as skilled in as they need to be. 2, they don't have the time to do it. And 3, they're not responsible for it.
Yeah.
So, all that ends up is people pointing fingers at you.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the idea of clear goals, because I think if you haven't got clear goals as a marketer, and we are asked to, there's a lot of great ideas out there and some not so great ideas, right? And we only have a finite amount of time to do any of them. And I think if you haven't got goals, how do you say no? Or even a big yes. Oh yeah, hell yeah, we're going to do that because this fits our goal. This fits what we're trying to do. But somebody comes to you and say, I have to get into this every time I talk to you, Cathy. We need more cowbell. So I'm putting that in everything now. And you can't say no because you haven't really structured your organization, your goals right. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. And we're on the hamster wheel like we were talking about just now. The other thing I thought, Cathy, is that with all these sort of cool kids, 40-odd cool kids that are writing these crazy things about being great and all that kind of stuff, you kind of like, you're very grounding. It's like, come on, kids. And I don't
101.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't build a skyscraper on quicksand.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
It's not going to work. So unless you have the foundation, Ian, you and I have been talking about this. I don't know if you remember the keynote that I did in Germany.
When
remember?
I was CMO Accenture, yeah.
And it was, building the foundation, and it was all, in an analogy of your house, right?
Yeah.
So, I get, I'm a big fan. I was late to races, full disclosure. I think they're amazing. They're great in theory. In practice, they're often ignored when there's a crunch. But when you have a racy and when you have defined roles and responsibilities to support one another, all you need is a little bit of like sitting up straighter and a little bit taller and saying, and pointing to those two things. And especially when that person signed off on those things, right?
Yeah.
Because if you end up in that hippo situation, right, where it's the highest paid in the room, their point wins.
Yeah.
And this helps you do the right thing versus the thing they want.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm the same about OKRs, to be honest with you. I went through a big OKR process working in a large organization. It was tedious, to be honest with you. But once you get on board with it and you get over those sort of hard yards at the beginning, you wonder, how did we do this without it? It just becomes the hymn sheet for the whole business. And also what I like about OKRs is you ladder them up and down your organization. So, you've got 3 basic objectives for the company, and one of them is probably to get revenue. And then everybody else's OKRs ladder down below that and say, well, how are you contributing to revenue, etc.
Yeah.
So yes. Anyway, we've wandered into one of my favorite topics, which is that. But I think we're going to hit the 5th. Now, the thing is, I am cheating a bit, Cathy, because I can make this podcast as long as I like. So I don't really. If I win this bet, it's a bit weak and a bit hollow. So, I'm
going to give it to you though.
That's very nice of you. So the next one is the rise of Gen Z or Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen
we
Z.
say it right. They say it wrong.
Good. Kim.
Mutzos.
Yeah, we did rehearse this earlier and I got it wrong then as well. So the vice president of editorial, so I think she works for Stephanie, right?
She does, yes.
Content Marketing Institute. And I thought this was interesting because I don't think it's that straightforward. So she said, the extremely online generation will raise the bar even higher. They may be relatively new to the workforce, but most are old hands at creating digital content. They also happen to be demanding content consumers with low tolerance for anything boring, manipulative, or inauthentic. So expect Gen Z to teach the old content pros some new tricks. And maybe I took offense to that, being an old content pro. I'm just kidding. But I am curious what you think, because obviously you've got we've both got the client work to back this up. But is it a generational thing, do you think? Do you think any of us have tolerance for anything boring, manipulative, or inauthentic?
I think, Gen Z and those of us in the know, you and I and are like, we can sniff out inauthenticity a mile away, right? Like we know. I know people will show, like, look at this. And I'm thinking, this is not real. So whether it's blatantly Gen AI, whether it's total, buzzword speak or that kind of thing, or I think this generation, the Gen Z generation, does an amazing job. My daughter every day wows me with her knowledge and awareness of the brands and products and the companies with which she interacts.
Yeah.
So they're way better at that than we are. So those companies our generation, our parents' generation, who would, maybe ours would diss a tobacco company, yet turn around and buy a chocolate bar from the same company. They just, because they didn't know it was owned by big tobacco, right? So, or today's bad companies or the oil companies and things like that. So I do think they're more informed. I do think they think they're all that in a bag of chips. So it's, it's not like millennials or Gen Xers love boring and manipulative content.
Yeah.
But it's about evolving, right? And I think we're bending a little too deep into the Gen Z quirks, right? There's some stuff where you're just like, okay, first of all, they're not your audience. So why are you tailoring your content to them? I see so many brands do this where, unless I'm missing something completely, like, why are you bothering? It just, so I go back to Stephanie, where it's do better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I think there's a nuance on this in applying it to B2B as well. And I mean, Content Marketing Institute tends to be more B2B, but I guess this predictions post covers both. So maybe I'm, maybe I'm reading into this wrong. But for me, for B2B, I think, I absolutely agree. I mean, joking aside about being an old content pro, I completely agree that the extremely online generation can help us up our game and keep us on point. Everybody's got a contribution in the team. But I didn't really see the divide. I think this is what we all want to do, right? I don't think it's necessarily falls upon. And actually, Cathy, blundering around here, one of the things that stuck out on me back when I was at SDL, so a billion years ago, I was in a presentation and somebody said, "Oh, this is what Gen Zs want. They want this, and they don't want to talk to people on the phone, and they want short, snackable content. And they had a list of these things. And I looked at it and I went, yeah, that's me." I don't want any of those things. I don't want to talk to people on the phone. And so I think that what we need to do is to create experiences that are inclusive for everybody, depending on what their preference is, right? Yep. So no, I don't think you can assume that somebody of our age wants to talk to you on the phone. They don't necessarily, right? They want to be self-serve, same as any Gen Z person. So I think this is in fact, we're finishing on a prediction that we're not really clear about, but I thought it would be an interesting conversation to have with you about what you were seeing with your clients, whether, is Kim onto something with this? It sounds like maybe not.
Yeah, but it goes so much deeper than just content, right? The whole generational divide. Yeah. We're moving out of an era where we had the most defined generations within the workforce. Yeah. As the boomers retire, so we're down to 5, I think now instead of 6. And it makes a big difference. But again, if you start, it all goes back to the very, the core element, regardless of what kind of marketer you are or marketing you do or industry that you're in, you need to understand who your audiences are, not just your customers, but your audiences. Yeah. Understand them and then keep them in mind and the center of everything you do. If you do that, you'll be fine. Yeah, absolutely. And some of this stuff, you're in danger of ageism on some of these things on both sides. I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and there was a marketer, and he admitted that he got into marketing. I think it was a he or she. They admitted they got into marketing because they'd come out of uni. They were young. They got hired because they must know about social media, and actually they didn't. But it gave them that step into the business, and now they're a successful marketer, right? So I think there's some good stuff in that, but also we can't just make these broad associations with the fact it's just because somebody's of a certain age that they're any good or any bad at tick face or whatever. Absolutely. So, yeah. I think that might have been a little truer when the gens sort of initially when we really started leaning into them. But like you said, you give me a survey, a generational survey, I'm going to skew Gen Z every time. Yeah. And I'm definitely not.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, one of the things that I've been getting into more when thinking about personas is about values rather than age or generation. And, that's a lot of these values actually cut across generations, don't they? So, but anyway, I like the idea that the Gen Zs are going to give us Gen Zs will give us be contributing to our audience, by contributing to our work and raising our game. But I think everybody's going to do that too. So I think that's cool. All right. So those were our 5 predictions. We managed to get through them. So that was fantastic. Although we have been chatting for nearly 40 minutes. So
much for the shorter one.
Yes. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Cathy. And
thank you.
What are you up to at the moment? Have you got a webinar coming or any of those kind of things?
We do. We have our first 7th Bear webinar coming up on the 23rd of January, I believe it is. And we are talking about the importance of teams and what collaboration really is. And then we'll have one where we'll do it monthly and whatnot. There's going to be a bit more blogging traffic from my perspective on 7th Bear. I'm getting my game back up and going. So check that out. And
we'll do.
Yeah, I think that's...
I'll share that stuff in the show notes. And I think I made the joke last time is when you're talking about teams, you don't mean the crappy Microsoft product. You mean people getting together. And
Correct. Yes. Not the hijacked.
All right. Thank you very much, Cathy. And I'll see you in a few weeks' time and for your next month's visit to our studio. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Cathy. That predictions piece we were quoting from there was called The 40 Plus Content Marketing Trends Experts Predict Will Matter for Success in 2025, and it's on the Content Marketing Institute blog. It's always a pleasure to catch up with Cathy, and if you have any thoughts on the topics we discussed there, give us a shout on the email at hello@rockstarcmo.com. So that's a wrap on episode 252 of the Rockstar CMO Effing Marketing Podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me and the team here and all the things we discussed in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, as well as our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. Finally, I'd love to hear from you, so please say hello. If you connect on LinkedIn, please say you're a listener. And of course, if you like this, help spread the word by rating or reviewing us in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. The next episode will drop on Saturday, that we're calling the Rockstar and Rose, as me and Robert make some changes to the virtual bar and give it its own show. And next Wednesday, Jeff Clark is back from his holiday, so I'm looking forward to catching up with him. Until then, as Dewey Finn said in the School of Rock, you can't just say it, man. You got to feel it in your blood and guts if you want to rock.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.